Yes, yes, okay. Next question. My students and I feel that your releasing the Pentagon Papers was a tremendous act of courage and probably helped bring the war to a conclusion, although it dragged on after all efforts by everyone. We're wondering what your thought processes were when you were evaluating the risks to yourself and to your family before you started Xeroxing those papers and going around to people like Fulbright to try and get the
In many times in my life, I've had to weigh benefits and risks and whatnot. In this particular case, I didn't think it was a risk. When I thought of doing it, which was essentially the day or the day before that I did do it, I assumed that I would simply go to jail for life, for the rest of my life, with virtual certainty.
Yes.
And so it wasn't exactly a matter of a risk. It meant no career. It meant I informed my former wife that I would not be able to pay child support or alimony because there just wouldn't be any money. I'd be in prison. And shortly.
Yes.
To be shortly. So it was a decision then just to go to jail. On the other hand, as soon as I thought of it, of course, the possible benefit of it seemed very great. In the fall of '69, it wouldn't have seemed that great if I'd really thought of the idea maybe a year later, because at that moment Nixon didn't yet seem committed to the strategy, to staying in Vietnam.
Yes.
And later he did.
Right.
So he did seem committed, so the chance of having any effect seemed less. I thought that if I put out all this stuff on the Democrats especially, Nixon would be induced to blame it on the Democrats and to get out.
Yes.
And later that seemed less probable. So you might say there was more calculating later when I would take additional steps as to whether it would help or not. Because I always assumed that it would put me in jail forever. But at that point there seemed some chance that it would help. It didn't come out then.
Yes.
And as for why I was willing to do it, nothing else seemed to offer much promise. I didn't have any confidence that this would end the war, but it seemed that it might have a big effect. And that had to be done. Otherwise, I saw him committing himself to the war, and I saw the likelihood of years more war. So whatever I could do that had some chance of winning, of ending the war, seemed to be worth doing, even worth going to jail for.
Yes. Yes.
I think there was an associated thought there. You know, I was willing to risk my life in the Marines, risk my life in the 50s, risk my life in Vietnam as a civilian. So why shouldn't I be willing to risk going to jail?
Sure.
And that seemed to answer itself, or to go to jail.
Yes.
Now, there was one further thing that was necessary, I think, to put that question in my head, because one is brought up to think about risking your life in combat, you know, from movies and guns and everything, as a possibility.
Sure.
Not led to think about risking going to jail for your country.
That's right.
And what put that in my head was meeting a young American, one in particular, actually two, at a meeting of the War Resisters International at a Haverford, Pennsylvania, at an international conference at Haverford, Pennsylvania, in late August of '69.
Was that Randy Keller, Dr.
Randy Keeler, K-E-H-L-E-R.
Yes.
Actually, a man who worked for AFSC named Bob Eaton, who went to prison during that conference. We actually stood a vigil outside the courthouse while he was sentenced. And he's been out now for years, and he's stayed in AFSC and been one of their top people. So they were going to prison, and it made me realize that this was a possible thing to do. It was a useful thing to do, and I should consider doing it. And if I were willing to consider doing that, what could I do?
Right.
The answer was, well, I can put out the Pentagon Papers. So meeting them was an essential point. I actually started copying the papers within a month of meeting them.
Meeting them, yeah.